Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session of live stream with me, Dr. Aparajita Jirigunta, or Dr. AJ. Uh, for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, I am a leadership coach for ambitious working women who want to overcome their self-doubt and imposter syndrome to create thriving, rewarding careers and lives in all aspects of their lives, really. And I also partner and consult with organizations to help create inclusive cultures. Um, just a little bit about me, and if you're joining me for the first time, if you are joining us live, please make sure you comment so that I know that you are here and so that I'm able to respond to you. But other than that, what I wanted to talk about today is fear mentality. And really, to set the context of this fear mentality and what I mean by it, and we're going to get to the part about how it affects our leadership styles and our leadership behaviors and our leadership mindsets very soon. But to set the context of it, every single time a Black person in America is murdered, the other party somehow seems to be able to claim this sense of being afraid for their lives or feeling threatened or being fearful. And this has also happened in the case of the xenophobia and discrimination that we're seeing against Asian Americans who are getting attacked, that the attackers somehow felt fearful or angry. But this happens a lot more in the case of Black Americans, that it seems to have become this really convenient excuse um, for the other party, usually white people, to say, well, I was just terrified for my life. I was afraid. I was afraid of getting threatened, or I felt threatened, or something to that effect. And so today I really want to unpack what exactly is it that you're afraid of when you say you are afraid of a human being because they look different from you. Because as it turns out, the reality of that situation has nothing to do with the other person, and it has everything to do with you. So when you say you're afraid for your life or that you're feeling threatened, please remember that is not actually coming from the other person. That is coming from within you. That fear is coming from within you. And it is up to you to unpack that fear and understand what are the biases that are making it that you lean into that fear instead of seeing the other person for who they are. This is especially salient in the disproportionate number of Black Americans who are murdered because, or assaulted, or jailed unfairly, because it is usually, again, a white person who somehow feels threatened and calls the cops on them, calls the systemic law enforcement officers on them. And these officers are trained and brainwashed to operate in a system that benefits just a few. Right? So when you say that you are afraid of something, where exactly is that coming from? And if you are coming from that place of fear, how are you being a leader? And how are those two connected, really? Let's unpack that for a quick second, because this idea of fear is not something that is just happening in society. We see it happening in corporate America too, where where current leaders claim to be all for inclusion and diversity, but they also claim that they get paralyzed from action, because they are terrified of saying or doing the wrong thing to offend another person. So this is not just something that is happening on the streets. This is something that is happening in corporate America as well. This is something that is happening across all the spaces of our society, perpetuated by this really pervasive anti-Blackness that has been a part of the American rhetoric since the very, very beginning of America, from its colonial roots all the way back. Now, given that historical context, What does it then mean to say that you are afraid, especially as the person who is a part of mainstream society, who has the power, who has the authority, who knows that they are more likely to be believed than any other parties? When you say that you are afraid of doing or saying the wrong thing, what are you actually not doing or not saying about the right thing? And what do you need to unpack in yourself to step away from that place of fear and actually learn about the other person authentically? What I mean by that is, if you are a leader, if you are a current leader and you are saying that I'm not doing or saying the right things to move the needle towards real, authentic, intentional inclusion, towards real belongingness where people can thrive because of their unique lived histories, not despite of them, then you are complicit. You are part of the problem. This is not a time for you to step into your fear and stay silent. This is a time for you to unpack your inner mechanisms of why you are feeling that fear. Because that, again, that fear is coming from within you. What is it that is causing you to do that? Is it that you're not even stepping into your own vulnerability? Is it that you are not being completely, brutally candid and honest with yourself about how you've been conditioned to live your life with all of these stereotypes, biases, and prejudices? What is it? Because when you are afraid of something, that is coming from within you. I'm afraid of spiders, or rather, I was. It had nothing to do with the spiders. It had everything to do with what I thought the spiders were going to do to me, regardless of the truth of the situation, the truth that the spider is this big and I'm this big, right? That fear came from within me. And there were actions that I took to learn and grow from that. And those actions started off as very simple things, even something as simple as looking at pictures of spiders and not getting to the point where I don't cringe out of fear. I'm not comparing people to spiders here, but what I am saying is that when you use fear as an excuse, you do not get to throw it as a burden on the other person, because your fear has nothing to do with the other person. It has everything to do with you. And it is your responsibility to unpack whether that is really a fear or a bias that you are using fear as a veil for. Unpacking that bias, pushing aside that veil, and getting to the difference between the beliefs you've been conditioned with and the truth of the matter is the kind of leadership we need to move forward, is the kind of leadership we should all strive for, because that is when you are being an ally, when you are unpacking your biases and realizing where they're coming from, and still are able to acknowledge and honor the other person wholly as a whole human being and not as a threat. And of course, when I talk about all of this, I am not talking about not being fearful of somebody who is potentially, I don't know, holding a gun to your head, or who is potentially physically, actually physically, immediately and imminently threatening your life. That is not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about all of the times that fear has been very conveniently used as an excuse to take somebody else's life, when it really wasn't a real and imminent threat in the lives of the people who were fearful. Now, fear is a feeling. You feeling that subjectively, I'm not invalidating that at all. What I am encouraging you to do is to unpack where those feelings are coming from, and unpack the difference between the beliefs of why you feel that and the truth of why you feel that. Because oftentimes this fear literally comes from not knowing enough about the other person and not seeing them as a whole human being who deserves to live, who deserves to have the same human rights as you. This is not a bipartisan issue. This is not a political issue. This is a very, very basic humanity issue. So when you step into that fear mindset, you are not expressing good leadership behavior. And the way for you to be a good leader, whether you're a current leader or an aspiring leader, is to really unpack your own biases, to tap into your own belongingness, your own innate need for equity, and to realize all of us have that. All of us are vulnerable. All of us are the gods and goddesses and just super amazing human beings that we are because of our unique journey. As a leader, what is it that you can do to help other people thrive with what their unique needs are? When you step in from a place of fear, I can 100% guarantee you that other people's needs and you serving them and you being a good leader are not even on your list of priorities because you're paralyzed in a state of fear. Oftentimes, this fear is irrational. So when you unpack it rationally, you end up unpacking your biases. You end up getting to the root cause of what is it that made you feel like it was okay in that moment to claim that you were afraid, and because you were afraid somebody else lost their life, because that is not okay. It is not okay that Black Americans continue to lose their lives just because somebody is crying wolf. It is completely not okay that we see these same trends happening in corporate leadership in their own insidious way. It is not okay that instead of addressing the real inequities and disparities that are happening, we are caught up in the he said, she said, and context of, well, is this justified or not? The loss of another human life out of somebody's fear is not justified, especially when that fear was unfounded. And if you are thinking, well, I need more context for this, you have a lot of unpacking to do. You really do. Because we all need to be able to have these conversations without stepping into that place of fear so that we can actually have real, authentic conversations about what people's needs are, so that we can level set societal authority hierarchies, so that we can all realize that all of us have baggage to unpack. But it is by unpacking it together that we're going to get somewhere. It is by unpacking these things together and having real conversations and coming from a place of vulnerability, transparency, genuine curiosity, and compassion that we are going to get anywhere. All of these, the vulnerability, the transparency, the love, the compassion, these are all characteristics that Black Americans have historically been denied throughout the course of American history. They've had to shed blood to just get compassion. Think about that for a second. Think about that for 10 minutes if you have to. And think about the unfairness of that. Now think about any other marginalized community you want to, if that helps you relate better. Nobody deserves that. And we all can be better leaders just as human beings when we step out of that fear. So what exactly is it that we are afraid of? And why are we not unpacking that? Why are we using fear as a veil? That is a question that I want to pose to you today. And I really hope you think about it. And I really hope you comment on this so that we can have a real dialogue about this fear mentality and how it's stopping us from being the leaders that we know we can be, the leaders that we need to be to create a more stable, inclusive, equitable society for everybody. That's it for me for today. I'll be back on Monday. Talk to you soon.